ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Off the Cuff. My name is Fred,
I'm Brian.
and we are marking a return to our original format today.
It's
So,
our multiple topics because they're no longer one topic or three topics. So today we're going to be discussing, the Democrats had to leave the state of Texas and they got COVID. And we're going to talk about a serious topic as regards to an officer who had post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, in Texas, and he's now trying to fight to get his job back. So we're going to go a little bit deep into law enforcement and PTSD, as well as this officer's case, and just some things that we get generally annoyed with for our general topic.
generally annoyed or
Generally
annoy
annoyed.
the ever-loving crap out of us, whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, anyways.
6-1.
So, yeah. Okay, so first we're going to go ahead and talk about the Texan police officer that's now trying to get his job back. He was a Fort Worth Police Department that they had to fire him due to him taking drugs to alleviate his symptoms of PTSD. And, he spoke. Well, Fred, you know more about the story. Go ahead.
I don't know how much more, but so essentially, Officer Jose Reyes, he joined the Texas, the Fort Worth, Texas Police Department back in 2010. And as you read through some of the articles about this, it's ridiculous, like how some police officers can go their whole careers and not really have any critical incidents. And this guy just had a laundry list of things happen to him in 2012. And not all of these things are awful, like he got shot at. Some of them are just you see horrific things or things that get to you. 2012, he rescued a pregnant woman after she was shot by a man. He actually was awarded the Certificate of Merit for his duties for that. In 2014, he was the first officer on scene on basically an ambush-style attack where they called in emergency and were targeting first responders. In 2015, he and another officer were involved in a shooting that left the suspect dead. And at that point, what people have to understand is PTSD had, up until very, very recently in law enforcement, and I assume the military as well, had kind of a stigma of you being weak. So he was never offered psychological evaluation or treatment, and this is per his wife. And in 2017, he suffered a broken wrist when he responded to a domestic dispute and was dragged by a suspect vehicle. And as you go forward, obviously we're not going to read everything to you, but the short and sweet of it is that Officer Reyes they passed a bill or law or something to that effect in 2018, requiring that officers be afforded greater access to mental health care, especially after critical incidents. And at that point, he wasn't even assigned a caseworker until 2019. And his last incident was in 2017. So some of these were, 7 years old, some of these incidents, and they just kept piling on. And it got to the point where it was kind of almost too little too late by the time they actually stepped in and did anything about it. And going forward, there was a lot of instances where, his mental health professional retired and then they didn't offer him any assistance beyond that. And he was having a hard time getting his PTSD meds filled. And at one point it sounds like they tried to force him into medical retirement, which is where we ended up. He finally was afforded assistance. And, at that point he had made an admission that during all these instances where he was having trouble getting help, and he couldn't get his prescription meds filled, he started abusing other substances or drugs to try and help cope. Just like most anybody does, they turn to alcohol, they turn to, uppers or downers, whatever, to try and to ease their symptoms. And once he made this report to this mental health professional, they then reported it to the agency, and then he was fired. He was terminated. And he is now suing. Um, Obviously, the leg that he's standing on is that he, was not, PTSD wasn't taken seriously, and he was not given the assistance that he needed, so he had to self-medicate. So, I mean, I don't. After going through all this, I mean, what does all this mean to you, Brian? Like, how do you feel about all this? I know pretty much everybody in law enforcement has some kind of stance on PTSD somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that definitely goes under recognized, especially in our line of work. I mean, there's been a lot of awareness for the military, and that's a good thing. And I hope to that they continue doing that, but also in law enforcement, not even in law enforcement, EMS, fire, all first responders really go through some calls that they just are not, don't cope well with them. And, they may get PTSD, especially police officers, if it's in a shooting, they may not. I mean, it's just something that everyone in the society, the departments, and the government, I know the government's not really good at doing
Anything,
that.
anything.
Yeah. Because I
Yeah,
mean,
but
just look at the VA and the veterans coming back with PTSD, and how their care is not as good as
it's abysmal.
most. Yeah, it's abysmal, and they should, after a critical incident, the department has psychologists, right?
Yes.
Or at least where we work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Every agency that I've worked for has access to something.
yeah,
Um,
I
I
mean,
think
even if it's just a baseline, hey, just a baseline review, and then here's some resources. Even if it is from the private sector, I know in that same article, there's Blue Help, which is a nonprofit organization that helps police officers and first responders of any kind talk with the psychologist, get help. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot more out there, especially for veterans and law enforcement and first responders. Because I mean, we go through some pretty tough calls. I mean, no call's the same. Like we were explaining in our last episode, you go to a call, we have basically a template, a spectrum that we have to go back and forth on, and it's not always going to be the same.
Yeah, and it sounds like, as you and we can link to the articles and stuff, but it sounds like reading through all this, there were a lot of instances where they, for one reason or another, they hit walls and what they were allowed to do or what they were willing to do to assist. And it got to the point where he ended up having to come out of pocket, having families, having kids and a wife, and they have to come out of pocket for his mental health. And it even says somewhere in here, the mental health problems, the PTSD got so bad that he moved out of the house. Like, they didn't get separated, they didn't get divorced. He wasn't comfortable being there with his family because there was thoughts of suicide and things like that. And what people don't understand is and it doesn't just go for law enforcement, but
Yeah.
It's for everybody. Everyday people go through traumatic situations, and you and I may think that they're weak sauce or they're not that bad or whatever, but to them, it's one of the worst things they've ever seen. And everybody has their own way of coping and dealing with things, and not everybody's capable. Or maybe you've got that one thing that's that trigger that sets you off, that this is the thing that pushed you over to where you can't mentally handle it anymore. And I think the biggest problem is that, like I said earlier, the historical stigma. Like, you're viewed as being weak for asking for help. It was that way for a long time in the military until they finally started opening their eyes and figuring things out a little bit. And it still has not really, our agency is good. This is in no way, shape, or form questioning our agency,
definitely
but
not.
in general, in law enforcement, there is a stigma. And I mean, this only proves it. You go in, you seek help from a mental health professional, and you say the wrong thing, and they're trying to force you out with a medical retirement, which he refused because he knows that he could do the job still, but he just needed assistance. Back when these things weren't huge problems on his psyche, he needed assistance, and they never gave it to him. And the place that he's at now is because of their piss poor management of this.
Yeah, and I mean, what this officer raised was at least 4 critical incidences.
Critical incidences in a span of 5 years.
Yeah.
There are guys that do 25, 30-year careers and have like 1 or 2. This is 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, at least after the second one where it was open firing on officers, and he was first there, at least get him evaluated at that point.
Yeah, and this is I'm sorry, like this is a failure on
Yeah.
either the police department or the system they have set up in Texas or whatever the case may be. There's somebody's to blame for this because, and yeah, I mean, there's so many hands in the pot when it comes to blame for this, and
Yeah.
I completely understand where he comes from because you don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to, and especially in the climate we have now, you don't want to say the wrong thing. And I'm not just talking about law enforcement. I'm talking about gun rights, everything. Like you don't want to say the wrong thing and be labeled, and you lose your freedoms or you lose your job. And all they did was really, really just prove that that's you know this you backed someone into a corner to the point where they had no other option but to do this, to self-medicate. And I don't agree with it. I'm not saying it's okay, and I'm not giving him a pass, but you got to the point where you were asking for help. Like it's one thing if you're just a piece of crap that just went out and were like, I don't want to spend the money, I don't want to do anything, I'm just going to self-medicate with oxycodone or whatever the hell else. And this guy was actively seeking help and he was getting roadblocks. Like that's a problem. You have a police officer coming to you and going, something's not right, I feel off, I don't feel safe with my kids and my wife at home, I need assistance. And they're like, here's some programs, but you got to come out of pocket on your own. Thanks for your service, thanks for all those instances that you went to where you made the Fort Worth police look good, and you sacrificed your mind and body and soul, but you're on your own, buddy. Sorry, so sad, too
Yeah.
bad. And that's a disgrace.
And by the
I
way,
think it's a
we're
disgrace.
also going to fire you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and we left you high and dry, and you did what you could to solve the problem, and now you're fired.
Yeah.
Um, that in today's climate, I don't ever try to predict what judges and juries and stuff are going to do because who knows what the hell they're thinking sometimes. But
Yeah.
I can't imagine a scenario with this sob story that he's got, it sounds legitimate. I can't imagine a scenario where he doesn't win some kind of damages from it.
Yeah. Or maybe he'll get lucky and another police department in Fort Worth area will take him, either police department or sheriff's office, whatever.
Because I believe from the article he's only 46 years old, which I
Oh,
mean,
yeah. Yeah.
technically based off of our retirement system. Like when I started, I could retire at 49. So I mean, it's old in law enforcement, but it's not. But it is. But it's not. So
Yeah. It's kind of a where you're when you started type thing.
and what pension plan you're under, and if they changed it
Yeah.
and so forth. So
Yeah. Just a whole bunch of factors as far as that. But I know for our agency, they give us a pay incentive if we go to like stress management classes. Um, I know that for sure. I don't know if any other programs you know about.
we have employee assistance programs and stuff, things that you can reach out to, and everything's confidential with those things because I've known people, I have close relationships with people that work on and it's not really work, it's like an extracurricular thing for the job, and
Hmm.
they don't get paid extra, I don't think, for it, but they're part of that program, and they're everything's confidential. Like I've gotten yelled at because I walked in someone's office and they're like, get out, we've got the EAP stuff out, like you get out of here. So that means very, very confidential, and like they don't tell anybody anything. They can get in boatloads of trouble if they do. And I think what this all really boils down to is the stigma of looking weak, not being strong enough to get through everything. That stigma's got to go. It has to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everybody understands what everybody's going through. Something that's not a big deal to you might be a huge deal to me, or vice versa. And and the everyday average person that hasn't seen some of the things we've seen, some of their stuff, like I said earlier, may be petty to us, but to us, it's awful. I remember probably one of the worst things that I had ever seen. And it's in the scheme of things of what we see, you wouldn't think about it. But one of the worst things I had ever seen was we had a family, when I was working for my first agency, we had a family visiting from the UK, and they had a rental house that maybe they own it, maybe they don't, I don't know. They come every year, and they had all their family here. tons and tons of people. And one of the kids, like probably only like 8 years old, and at the time I had a child about the same age, and this kid's running in circles, and just collapsed. So we get called out there, and I'm the first one there, and of course everybody's freaking out, and everybody's panicking, and they're circling around this kid, and like there's only so much I'm going to be able to do, obviously CPR and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but I also have 30 people standing here that I got to, some people almost went to jail because they were actively causing a problem where we're not helping the child because they can't calm down. So thankfully I got there with just enough time to get everybody separated and sorted away so EMS could come in and do what they did. And the kid was white, going white and blue, then white, and going lifeless. And the kid got transported to the hospital. And my sergeant came in. At this point, I'd probably only been a cop for maybe 3 years. And like, that was one of the one instance where my face had, I mean, whiter than usual. It was super white,
Yeah.
pale. And like, I was so lost. And like everything was going in slow motion, tunnel vision, like you've never seen. You know, we talk about tunnel vision. It's like, you ever watch the show The Flash, where he starts running super speed and everything around's going really slow. It was kind of like that. And my sergeant came to me, and I'll never forget him. He was something else, but I'll never forget some of the stuff he said to me. And that one, he told me, he's like, man, that look on your face right now that you have right now, especially after seeing a little kid like that, when you stop reacting like that to things like this, it's time to get out, because that's dangerous. You know, when things like that don't bother you. And just for the sake of closure for everybody, about a year later, when they came back, they stopped my zone partner, and they were like, "Hey, is that officer working?" And he called me on the radio, and I came over, and they were like, "Hey, oh my gosh, thank you for everything you did, and you know, he made a full recovery, and he's happy and healthy, and everybody's good." And that was like you don't think about it. You don't think about how much it was weighing on you until a year later, when somebody gives you the good news, and you're like it was like a little nagging sadness in the back of your soul that you forgot was there. You push it down, you forget it's there, and that just the relief, like it felt like I didn't even know I was still dealing with it, or it was bothering me, and it was like a 50-pound weight pulled off your shoulders. So everybody reacts to things differently, and honestly, I think everybody in this line of work, if you've been doing it for more than 6 months, everybody, I mean, unless you work in some little podunk hillbilly town where you've got like 2 cops and nobody really ever gets into anything, pretty much everybody that does this job for more than 6 months has some form of PTSD. Maybe it's not full blown clinical. You know, maybe you're not going to necessarily need assistance for it, but everybody's been through traumatic stuff at some point or another. I know, like, you've been here, like right about that 2 years, give or take.
Almost up to my 2-year mark. Yeah.
And I know you've been to some messed up stuff, because I've just in the window of time we worked together, I've maybe not been to the calls with you, but heard you going to stuff on the radio. And like, I mean, everybody's got it, and it doesn't, and that shouldn't cheapen it. That doesn't cheapen it, and it shouldn't cheapen it. You know, just the fact that everybody's got something going on, like, that's even more reason why they need to start taking this stuff more seriously. And thankfully our agency takes it very seriously, but this is bad. I mean, you look at every single article we pull up, I mean, and it's somewhere in here. And reports of police officer suicides in the United States increased from 172 in 2018 to 239 in 2019. That's a 39% increase. And that's from the Blue Help you were talking about earlier. In 2020, the number dropped. Thank God, it dropped to 174. But since 2016, when the organization Blue Help first recorded 143 police officer suicides, the number has increased by nearly 60% when compared to 2019. 60% in just 4 or 5 years. Oh, actually, 2019. So 3 years. In a 3-year span, it went up 60%. I mean, that's a problem. And there's just now, finally, I mean, stop and think, it's 2021, and we're just now, as a collective whole in law enforcement, really starting to take law enforcement PTSD seriously. I mean, think about all the people. I mean, working at my previous agency, I've had sergeants who are going through divorce stuff that ended up getting fired and arrested because of stuff, because PTSD stuff. I mean, like it's there, it's
Uh,
there. And
yeah, and I mean that's why divorce rates among police officers are so high as well, is just for the untreated PTSD.
I don't know what and I don't know what the answer is. I mean, the statistical data is for now in 2021, but I'm
No,
sure it hasn't changed much for the better. When I started back in 2009, those first couple of years, they updated their statistics, and the average lifespan at that point for a police officer after retirement was 5 years. Whether it's health related deaths, suicides, whatever the case may be. 5 years. I mean, and you stop and think about that. You put that in perspective. You're like, 5 years. Oh, okay. Cops don't normally be cops until they're like 70, 80 years old. Like I said earlier, like I can retire at 49, so by that standard, I would be dead by 54. Like that's a problem. That's not being addressed nearly enough. It's finally starting to be addressed pretty seriously, but it could be too little, too late for a lot of people at this point.
yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing about it.
So, just the only thing I would say is, to any cops listening, check on your people, man. Check on your people and make sure they're okay. Um, I've been doing this long enough that, and this is not knocking anybody or saying that anybody's struggle isn't real, but man, just look at some of the people, some of the celebrities that have died. Robin Williams, some of the people that just look the happiest are the ones that it sneaks up on, and they hide it. They know how to hide it from people because they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want to lose their jobs. The people that are outwardly expressing their frustrations and venting usually are not as bad off. That's not to say that's always the case, but they're usually not as bad off as the people that just they come to work with a smile on their face and look like everything's fine. Check on everybody, make sure everybody's okay, make sure everybody's good. And that extends to your friends and family, because everybody's got their own stressors. Everybody's got their own problems. Law enforcement has horrific problems sometimes, but we don't have it necessarily worse off than anybody. Everybody's got their own struggles. So
Yeah.
check on people, man. That's important.
Yeah, and definitely if you need help, if your agency has something, talk with them. Blue Help is is a nonprofit organization that helps first responders with PTSD, and like I said, there's probably a whole bunch of free resources even out there. But it definitely, it needs to be handled on the agency level.
And
I don't feel like a federal level or maybe even a state level will be able to really help. I think it should be more of an agency.
and more agencies need to take it seriously. And I agree with you. I don't think it necessarily is going to, it requires a legislation, but agencies definitely need to be held accountable if like a situation like this where someone's actively looking for help. Like, not being able to see the signs and symptoms is one thing, but when someone's actively coming to you and going, I need help, and you're finding every excuse to can them instead of help them, that's the problem. So
Yeah.
that needs to fall in the lap of the people that failed. So just be there for each other. You know what? And if you're someone that's suffering from the PTSD, don't be afraid to say something. You know what? As good as some of these agencies may be, push comes to shove, what it boils down to is you're a number, and your mental health and your safety is more important than anything. And if they're going to fire you, they're going to fire you. That's what lawyers are for. That's what lawsuits are for. If they're going to fire you, they're going to fire you. But yeah, don't allow the fear of termination or whatever kind of retaliation or retribution or whatever to stop you from getting the help that would stop a severe problem down the road.
Yeah.
Because your job is not as important as your health, period. End of discussion. There's no two ways about it. job is not as important as your health. And I'm sure your family would like to keep you around for a little while.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So we're going to go ahead and transition into the next topic, which would be the Texas Democrats leaving Texas because of uh, a what was it, a
the voter
rights
ID.
voter
Yeah.
ID bill, and then coming back and getting COVID. So
Yeah. So essentially, the Texas Republicans were putting together a bill for voter registration. They like to call it, restrictive voter laws, but in reality, it's holding people accountable. And
yeah,
they're trying to, institute voter IDs and all that other stuff. So these Democrats decided that they were going to all hop on a plane together, and we've got a photograph of it. They're crammed into a tight confines of a cabin of an airplane. No one's wearing masks, even though they're demanding that you wear them.
yeah.
And their stance is that they are leaving the state to break quorum to stop Republican voting bill. And the idea was they need, I don't know what it was. It's what, 2/3 presence, something like that. They need like a 2/3 presence in the House in order to get the vote, to even start. Um, and their idea was they flee the state and not enough people show up, and they won't even be able to start the voting, because once the voting starts, there's nothing they can do to stop it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But I mean, I'm assuming, I don't know exactly, but I'm assuming all these politicians were vaccinated as well for COVID. So they
well,
decided to get onto a tightly confined airplane. Who, it looks like a private jet to me. I don't know. I've only been on commercial airliners, so
I don't know too many commercial airliners that have individual seats.
yeah.
So
That and everyone else has to wear a mask on the airplane, or
and they
get
also,
arrested.
when they got to DC, they were all on a charter bus together too, also not wearing masks. Imagine that. Do as I say, not as I do, you peon.
Rules for thee and not for me.
So this was all done to kill the bill and not even give it a chance to get to voting. So the Texas House decided that, the governor, Greg Abbott, made threats that if they do leave, that they will be facing arrest. So going forward, the Texas House decided, they passed an order or directive that as soon as these people, these Democrat lawmakers, or anybody for that matter, that left, regardless of political party, it just so happens they all happen to be blue. Once they return to the state, the highway patrol is ordered to immediately take them into custody. If they do not return in X amount of time. So how do you feel about all that? I mean, do you think that's an overreach? I mean, do you think it's appropriate? On both sides, do you think the Democratic response was appropriate, and the Republican response and the governor's response to push to have them arrested was appropriate?
Yeah, I don't think the governor's actions were justified, even if it was for a vote. I mean, politicians do this regularly, where they leave and for a vote where they don't want it to happen, or filibuster. So I mean, this is just, in my idea, this is just politics. Obviously, I can see why the Democrats left, because they have a bill that they know they're not going to be able to fight, and so they decided to go to Washington and try and fight for the We the People Act, which is just more of a We the People in Power Act, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't think the governor should have had the state highway patrol arrest them. I mean, it's them leaving. Like I said, is just politics. Politicians playing politics.
So I have mixed feelings. So as far as them leaving, I mean, it's definitely a coward move, and it's definitely petty politics. They would be up in arms if the roles were reversed. If
Yeah.
if Republicans left the state to block some Democratic bill, they'd be losing their minds and they'd be screaming and crying in their soup. Um, I think it was a petty move. It was a coward move. You're outnumbered. You know that you're not getting the results you want, so you kick and scream and throw a temper tantrum, and I'm going to DC to fight for this other. No, you're not. You're not. You know damn well what you're doing, and you did it on purpose. And this goes back to the discussion we've had multiple times before, that this comes down to, what's good for you is not good for me, and these you know this would be, if the other side of the spectrum had done this. Joe Biden would be on TV talking about action needs to be taken. This is ridiculous. Kamala Harris would be on there calling them cowards and telling them, slandering them to the people. It's a one-way street.
And it would just be around the clock coverage on CNN and MSNBC on how horrible these Republican senators are.
But these Democrat senators and House members are, they're lauded as heroes by some of these news stations. So,
Yeah.
As far as arresting them, I mean, you've got a duty to represent the people. Sometimes representing the people means that what the people want is not what you like. And, it's one thing to lose the vote and then challenge it. And it's another thing to try to block the vote altogether with petty means. I would say that I don't necessarily disagree with the arrests, but at the same time, it better go both ways. So if you're willing to have Republican senators get arrested for playing these piddly games, then okay, I'm good with it. But
Yeah.
that's not the case. That's not the case.
No.
This is an angry reaction to the Republicans being as petty as the Democrats are, and not they didn't get their way, so now they're gonna, and none of them are gonna get arrested. Let's be honest, none of them are gonna get arrested. And even if they do, it'll be a dog and pony show, and it'll never go anywhere. Nothing will ever come of it.
Yeah.
So it's just grandstanding, really. It's just one side was beating their chest, and then now the other one's beating their chest back, and they're trying to show who's the alpha, is what it boils down to. So, but yeah, I definitely think this was. I hate when they play these games. Like, I hate when they play these games. You can call it whatever. It's restrictive. They like to play word games. They like to pull this nonsense. Oh, it's restrictive legislation. No. It is requiring that people have identification to prove who they are before they vote. It's stopping. I just saw an article while we were combing through Facebook, kind of discussing everything. And there's the Washington Post did an article. It's an opinion piece, basically. And the headline of the article was, there's absolutely no reason that you need to be a citizen to vote. Excuse me? There's no reason that you need to be an American citizen to vote in American elections.
I should be able to go to Germany and vote for whoever I want in Germany. Same as the UK. Sure. Might as well just make a whole lack of a better a voting trip around the world to vote for whatever politician I like in other countries.
So, and
yeah.
And the outcry, what irritates me, and I'm not going to get too far off topic here, but the outcry, the selective outcry upsets me, because, you've got, anybody coming from a country where they think that they're going to be voting blue, they want them to have rights. It doesn't matter that they're here illegally. It doesn't matter that they're not citizens of this country. They want them to have all these pros of being in the US. But as soon as it's, say, a place like, I don't know, Cuba, where They are fleeing places that a place that has all that is run by all of the ideals the Democratic Party is pushing. So they're most likely going to vote red. All of a sudden, you've got you know people in the Biden administration going on TV telling them, "Don't come because you're not going to have amnesty here. It's fine. You're not going to have safety here. Don't come."
Yeah.
So the double sided the hypocrisy of it is what gets me really, honestly. So
Yeah. And it's just, I like you were saying, we're going to get people that will obviously vote blue. But, since now we're in power, we're not going to want those people that are actually being repressed by their government and being silenced to come over here, because we're not going to give them any kind of amnesty or, pathway to citizenship. No, they just got to live helpless under the Cuban communist government.
So, really for me, in short, it's just, I get that you don't agree. You don't have to agree on everything. Like that's the beauty of this country is we can disagree on things and try to have civil conversations and figure out the best, because not every conservative idea is the best idea. Not every liberal idea is the best idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you can't always think with your head and you can't always think with your heart. Sometimes you got to have a little bit of both. So you've got some logic, you've got some compassion. And I know we've gone over that at nauseum in the past, but
yeah,
just,
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Just flat out
self promote. Our last episode was just all about that. Finding out the facts for yourself and then making informed decisions.
And just to pull bull like this, just BS like this, and just not like no show. If you and I just no showed because we disagreed with something that our agency was doing, we'd be fired.
Yeah.
So, you have an obligation to be there. And guess what? Just because you think you're going to take the L, it is what it is. You're going to lose. You're going to lose. So, and that's where you challenges, you take things to the Supreme Court and all that other nonsense, and make sure that these laws are just. And if they're not just, then you get rid of them. But I know it's not that simple, but the process is the process, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to laws, there's so many processes to either undo things or find stuff unconstitutional. I mean, there's definitely a process, especially when it comes to making laws. So if you don't necessarily win this time, you might win down. You might win a bit ways down the road.
Yeah. So just to get a little more of the detail here, it looks like 57 of the Democratic House lawmakers left the state. So obviously, it says the remaining members of the Texas House voted 76-4 Tuesday to issue a call of the House, and that call of the House is what forces the vote. And when they don't show up, they can't vote. So,
and then GOP wins either way.
Yeah, and he's going at any time they like Greg Abbott's out there and he's like, when they come back to the state, they will be arrested. Like whenever they get all like high and mighty like that and they start just slamming their fists and stuff, it usually ain't nothing coming out of it.
It's usually a sound bite for your reelection campaign.
Right. Posturing, peacocking and stuff.
Trying to get those donor dollars.
So shame on the Democrats for making this about re-election or appeasing their little camp, rather than they keep talking all this nonsense about we're for the people, yet when the people stand up and they decree that they want things a certain way, and then the Democrats are like, nope, well, the smaller portion of the country feels this way, so this is what we agree with, these are our politics. So that's a problem for me. And if the laundry list of things that you've got, and all the things you have to use an ID for, buying cigarettes, buying alcohol, buying a gun, buying all these other things, you got to have a license to drive and all this other nonsense. But you don't have to have, and I'm not even asking you to have a driver's license, just have an ID card that the state verifies you are who you say you are. That's it. And I'm cool with giving them out for free. You show up and you provide the documentation, give it out for free. I'm good with it. as long as you can verify, like the state can verify that you are legitimately this person and you are legitimately a U.S. citizen and you can vote.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
All right, so
So
you have any more comments? Because I'm out of comments as far as this.
nah, just sick and tired of the nonsense. It's never going to go away. It's
No.
always going to be the same. So I guess the last thing we really have is our little pet peeves. I shouldn't even call it pet peeves because I don't know if you know this about me. I have like crippling OCD sometimes, and my
No.
wife hates it with a passion.
So what are some of your pet peeves, I guess, or crippling
Oh,
OCD?
well, this whole thing started because you and I were talking about pet peeves at work, but the goal of
Yeah.
this was just to be in general. I know you mentioned report writing was a big thing for you, just in general, and having been a detective and having been being a grammar Nazi, and I'm not perfect with grammar,
Oh no.
um, but I am a grammar Nazi in general. And, having worked for a supervisor that would practically pull out a stick and beat me with it if I messed up the grammar in a report, that I get so mad at myself when I submit a report and it gets approved and I go back and I always proofread it. It's a sickness.
Yeah.
And I read it and I'm like, oh, I typed that wrong. And I look like a moron.
Oh
I get that
man.
feeling like the attorney is going to look at that and think I'm stupid.
Trust me, there's been some reports, not anything criminal, but there's been some reports where I would write at like 3 o'clock in the morning, come back the next day and start reading it. I was like, why did I write this?
What the hell was I doing? I sound drunk while I'm
Yeah,
writing this.
exactly.
Um,
But yeah, that's mostly my pet peeves on how like I said, I'm not a grammar person either, but I have to read my reports 5 or 6 times to make sure I didn't leave out any words or it's not in the correct order how I've been taught for,
chronological and all that. Yeah.
chronological. Yeah. I mean, my report writing's obviously gotten a little bit better because you've actually helped me shorten my reports and not state, he
Be
stated
more
or she stated
concise.
500 times in the report. So, um, yeah, it's just mostly, I guess, really pet peeves I have is if I place something and I have like a system, even if it's a crazy system that doesn't make sense to anyone else, it's still
No.
my system. And if somebody moves something and I can't find it, and it's just,
Yes.
uh,
That's like nail right on the head, bro. You have no idea. Like
yeah,
I come home and I have like a specific spot where I put everything and somebody moves it and I'm like irritated beyond all reasonable expectation. Like I'm so irritated.
yeah,
And my wife's like, why you always accuse me of moving stuff? And I'm like, well, because I put stuff in the same place, like I'm a crazy person and you like it's gone. Somebody moved it. And then I go to find out that somebody grabbed it to use my debit card or somebody needed a pen. So they took my pen and they didn't put it back. And you never realize it until you're like running out the door to go to work. You're like, crap, this is going to make me late if I'm searching for this crap.
yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, I have like my big pet peeve is like my kids right now, whether it's the youngest one or the oldest one, they are like social media, TikTok trend, like everything. They run around doing that sheesh crap where they like screech sheesh at like the top of their lungs and do the friggin' thing in the arm and and it's like
That's I've never heard of that.
it's like everywhere I go, all I hear is memes and TikTok stuff. Like my daughter's always doing TikTok dances, and don't get me wrong, I'm a TikTok junkie, but they're like everything is like sheesh. And then there's another one that's in Spanish that I'm not going to say because when I did the actual translation, it talks about oral sex and all kinds of other stuff. So we're not going to do it. I don't
Yeah.
need to get it pulled down because of the vulgar language in it. But I mean, it's a nonstop. Um, it's like I live in TikTok, walking around this house, and every new slang, I hate their slang. I hate their slang. Like when they say something slaps or like it vibes, and I'm like
Yeah.
stop. Like your your slang is terrible. Um, I have OCD like super bad. It's bad how bad my OCD is. Just I'm that guy, when the light switches, they got to be right. You know what I'm saying? Like, so right
I'm
now
not that bad now.
right now it's driving me insane because the light switch in the in the room here that I'm in has a separate one for the across the house, like on the other side of the house, and like because people messed with it on the other side, they're out of order. Like one's up and two are down, and like, it's just driving me insane. Um, but just uh, I got all kinds of stuff. Like I could go on for like another 2 hours,
Yeah.
but um, just a big thing like comp wise is indecision. That bothers the crap out of me. But that kind of spreads into my personal life as well with my kids and stuff. Indecision bothers the crap out of me because you just not being able to make a decision, not being able to, you know what, and your decision's not always going to be the best possible outcome, but
Yeah.
have a little bit of confidence and make your decision. When you're waiting to, um, when you've got somebody getting fired up and they're getting ready to, you got to realize the signs that things are breaking bad, and you got to put yourself in a position to stop it, or you got to act before it gets out of hand. And people just have no decision making whatsoever. Um, I don't, me, I don't mind helping people.
Yeah.
You call me up and ask me questions. I don't mind. Like I'll stop what I'm doing, even on my day off, and or my time off, and I'll dig up the answer for you as best as I can. But when you're asking me the same question 47 times, like you're not getting something somewhere. Like, and that
Yeah.
bothers the crap out of me.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I'm not as the most experienced person on my squad, but I try to help, especially the newer, newer people with their report writing, and especially with the system we use, and just anywhere I can help, I will help. But just reading other people's reports, certain things just make me, uh,
cringe.
yes.
Want to throw
Thank you.
your laptop across the room.
Yeah, I just want to chuck it out the window and drive off. But yeah, just certain things on reports as fast as work goes. That's pretty much it. Um, I don't have anyone messing in my car, so, and I don't like anyone getting in my car either, because that's my space, and when you're in that space for 12.25 hours, that's kind of your office area. So
Yeah. Another big thing for me is like when we have like dispatchers or other cops that when they type in the like our CAD notes and stuff like that, or when people, whether it's reports or CAD notes, these are official documents. And when
yeah,
people speak, when people type like they speak, it drives me nuts. So when you get people, when you get someone that's got like a southern background and they're like, yeah, I seen him walking down the street, and they put that in their report, or they put that in the official like CAD notes. I'm like, I seen him. Oh, so now everybody at our agents, that people are gonna think our agency is full of morons because you put something like I seen him, or like, oh, that like, I grind my teeth when I hear it. It drives
yeah,
me up a wall. Reports should not be written like you're speaking to your friend at a bar while you guys are grabbing a beer. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? I mean, quoting people and putting curse words or inappropriate slang in quotations because you're quoting them is one thing, but
yeah,
when your actual report reads like you're a 13-year-old doing a video on TikTok, that's a problem. It's a problem for me.
yeah. And just radio traffic also. If we're just doing work, radio traffic. Some people just go on and on and on and on. You're just like, okay, I need to call out this traffic stop. Okay, I need to run this person so I can get on to my next call. I mean, it just it irritates me.
Every agency has some form of standard when you do a traffic stop that you
Yeah, I mean,
call
it
out
varies in
the
itself.
the vehicle, the location, and the actual tag. And different agencies do it in different orders based off of what they think is the most important information. But those three main things are the things that we need. We don't need to know that you had to U-turn, and we don't need to know that you guys pulled off in on the side of the road, half in the road, half out of the road. We don't need to
Yeah.
know that you set up cones. We don't need to know the race of every individual person in the car. We don't need to know what they're all wearing. Like, and it's like everything step by step is exactly what they're. There's no need to put the nonsense in there. That's oh
Yeah, and it also goes. That's why I don't do a lot of. If I don't have to do it over the radio, this is how I was taught. If you don't have to do it over the radio, do it the other way, because of course people are, especially if you're working during the days or during nights where traffic stops are more prevalent. People need to get on and speak, get out there, like you said, car description, tag and location, and so the next person can also do that stop or
well,
their
yeah, like you said, tying up radio traffic is
yeah.
bad because you get some of these people on there, and what they're doing is the most important thing to them, and you're running like 6 VIN numbers over dispatch while I'm standing here with someone that might have a warrant and wants to kill me. Like, you should maybe type it on the computer and have them just run all the line 9 or whatever, run all those VINs for me, please. Like, don't
Yeah, or copy update done. 2 words.
a 10-minute dissertation closing out the call. Like, stop.
Yeah,
It's bad.
everyone that you work with doesn't need to know what happened,
Yes.
especially if it's something very insignificant, like if it's a dog call.
And people not knowing their jobs is a big thing for me. That's a problem. And we won't get into specifics because you have had quite a few doozies lately where people that are make more money than you and that are supposed to be smarter than you struggle.
Yeah.
And that know your job. And I've said it before, knowledge is power. You should be able to get yourself out of most situations as long as you just know what you're doing and what your options are. And it's disheartening, and more agencies need to be aware of that. And it's not us, it's everywhere. It's every place that I've been. For one reason or another, someone just strikes them as this guy needs to be promoted or moved to the specialty unit or moved wherever, and they just have no clue what they're doing, like none. And they come up with some of these simple things, and it's like, no, you should know that by now. Like, you should not be getting corrected by someone that has 2 years on the job. Like, you shouldn't be.
Exactly.
So it's just you can't be expected to know everything.
Yeah, I mean, there's too much, especially where we work. There's too much that you have to know it all. But you need
your
to
law books are like this big. They're like this
Yeah.
big. I mean, sometimes you got to comb into them and find what you're looking for. Just know that thing is illegal and that it's somewhere in that book, and you can find the specifics if you need to. You know what I'm saying? But just
not even that. I mean, with today's technology, it's not, like back when my family was in law enforcement, where you didn't have the internet, you didn't have access to computers right there or a smartphone. I mean, like you said, you had the thick law book that you'd have to go through and see. I mean, I even carry the most updated law book from our state in my car, just because technology.
Just in case the internet goes down. Yeah.
Technology fails. Even cell phones fail. Sometimes you don't have signal. So I like to have hard copies of, especially the laws.
Yeah, but know your stuff. Like, just know what you're doing. Like, and when I was on the road at my first agency, I got about as good as I thought I was going to get on the road. And then I went into property crimes, and I'm like, man, there's some other things I could have been doing better, and I probably just hit that road patrol wall where you don't get better till you go into investigations. And then I thought I was on the money because now I'm a detective and I learned all this stuff and I was on the money. And then I went into major crimes, and I'm like, man, there was all these things that, I could have done this way or that way, or like could have been a more severe or less severe, whatever, and, so like child crimes, for example, when I worked at my first agency, I was in, one of the things we worked was child crimes, and you don't know everything about child crimes. That's a crime, but you don't always know where it gets enhanced here or enhanced there. And that's for the experts to know. But again, the law books, regardless of what state you're looking at, thousands upon thousands of pages. You can't be expected to, off the top of your head, know every single thing in that book at a drop of a hat, no matter what. But you should be able to use some common sense and go, that's not okay. So we're going to look this up real quick and figure it out. You
Yeah.
got to know somewhere, especially your
It-
supervisors.
yeah, you should have a general idea of multiple different types of calls. Specifically, like you were saying, you didn't really uh, know a lot as far as property crimes until you got into it, or investigations until you got into it. But I mean, you should generally know what to do, and especially your supervisor should have a little bit more expertise than you.
Maybe a little bit. Not a
Yeah.
bad idea. Couldn't hurt.
Or yeah, and like I said, I'm not even gonna claim to be an expert. I'm coming up 2 years now, but I'm far from an expert. But I mean, as far as certain things that we can do, just speaking with you and going to calls with you and seeing how you investigate stuff, I got a pretty general idea. I mean, not every call I go to, I'm like, oh, okay, this is easy and simple. I can just do this and this and this. But I kind of generally know what I need to look for and what kind of questions I need to ask, and just to be able to figure out whether there was a crime committed or not.
And kind of leapfrogging off of what we were just talking about, because it kind of is in the same spectrum, but just
Yeah.
being able to admit that you don't know what the hell you're talking about something. It's okay. Like
Yeah. Well,
I have not been doing this forever. I have buddies that I call and ask them questions sometimes, like, man, I know this is wrong somewhere. Or sometimes it's even like, hey, I know when we're dealing with this, that's against the law. And this is kind of similar, but not the same. Is there like a subsection that talks about this? I ask questions still, man, and like just be able to know, like there's nothing worse than when you act like you know what you're doing and you don't, and you screw it up. Like
yeah.
that's something we can't afford in our job. Like you can't
Yeah.
be just screwing stuff up. So
And I mean, I would be the first to say I honestly don't know what to do here, and I would call you or somebody else. Obviously, I'm not calling you at like 3 o'clock in the morning or anything, but
you
I'd
can, but
obviously
I'm not going to answer the phone.
yeah,
So
I don't even plan on calling anyone except somebody I'm working with at 3 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, that's why your supervisors are there. People, another pet peeve, talking about pet peeves. People that know or think they know what they're doing, but they don't.
ugh.
And then you're just kind of handed a big pile of crap and expected to figure it out.
Hey, fix this. This has been
Yeah.
screwed up royally. Fix it. And your name is going to be all over it. Good luck. Welcome to being a detective.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's probably even more worse being a detective.
This turd sandwich has absolutely been screwed up by road patrol. Fix it. And good luck.
Or road patrol handling other big piles of doo doo from
To other road patrols.
all the patrols. Yeah, different shifts. Of course, because you can't talk to them and figure out what's going on. But yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me, is not knowing what you're doing and not being able to admit that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Simple questions. Just ask questions, man. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say, like, uh, that kind of leads into my other thing is leaders versus supervisors. And I can't stand supervisors. I can work with them, you can get along with them, but there's so many in our line of work that are supervisors, not leaders. And
Yeah.
thankfully, my squad is loaded with good leaders right now, and it's fantastic. The agency we work at now, most of my supervisors have been leaders. I've had a couple that were just supervisors that barked orders and couldn't find the rear end with both hands, but it's not very often. It's very few and far between. Thankfully, I've been blessed with a lot of really good supervisors, but I'm a big fan of leaders, not supervisors, because leaders lead. They lead from the front. You know, um, nothing better than one of my first couple days on this new shift that I'm on, and I go out to this uh, vehicle burglary, and it's like 100 million degrees outside, and I'm like wearing all that gear, and I'm not exactly like a CrossFitter or anything like that. I'm sweating my behind off, just pouring sweat, and my sergeant shows up and he's like, "Hey man, yeah, take your statements, take your pictures, and I'll start dusting for prints." Because as you know, dusting for prints is the crappiest part of any call that we go to, especially in the heat, because everything gets muggy and sticky, and you're pouring sweat. You're trying not to drip it in the powder, and and you take a print card and you're trying not to get sweat dripping on that. And he's out there like standing out in the heat with me. He's like, "I'll do the crappiest part of this whole call. You just do what you got to do, man. I'll take care of you." And like that's stuff that most people don't do once they, people forget where they come from. So that's a big thing for me. And um, supervisors can manage, they can be fine, but the leaders are where it's at, and more people need to start worrying about being leaders, because that's a big thing. Like it's that's morale, man, is leaders. So I mean, at this rate, I'll let you finish off with whatever you got, if anything, because I'll keep going and going and going, and we'll end up like 3 hours. So
yeah, well, I'm out of pet peeves unless you have some more. But
there's a lot more.
Let me rephrase that. If you have one more,
I don't think I have one that won't turn into like another 15-minute dissertation. So I think we got the point across.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll definitely have another episode this week, because it's our not very long week. Of course, Fred is going to be on vacation, so we're not going to have any new content for maybe a little bit. But hopefully we're pre-recording a whole bunch of these and we'll just distribute them out while he's gone. So remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, notifications, hit all. Don't hit personalized. Still don't know what that does. Comment your pet peeves if you're in law enforcement. We'd like to hear that, so we can be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Comment what you'd also like to see from the show. If you want to be, we would love the interaction. Follow us on Facebook. We guess we're on all social medias now, as I broke down and did Twitter.
Oh, Twitter.
Even though I still don't understand it.
The toxic wasteland of Twitter.
Yeah. And we're on TikTok, which Fred here manages, because I don't like TikTok.
So yeah,
I'll waste half my life on it.
Just make sure you check in with us on all those, and
follow us on Facebook. That's probably the best way to get notifications that our videos are coming out.
Oh yeah. Just again, we appreciate everybody, and we'll keep cranking these out as much as we can, and we appreciate the support and the love, man. So unless Brian got anything else for you,
nope.
We will catch you on the next one, guys.
Yeah.